Another passage that hyper grace people try to use is 1 John 1 in between 7 and 9 or 7 and 9 to 9. They try to say that this is talking to unbelievers. Here John's speaking to unbelievers, but the problem is when it says that there's an advocate, it says we have an advocate. All through the passage, John uses we and us in it, which presupposes that this is context speaking to Christians. He's including himself even in all these different things that he's talking about. And so to say that a non-Christian has an advocate with the Father, well, that's just completely unbiblical in a sense. But the historical background behind this passage is very clear. John is warning them about Gnosticism. Gnosticism was rampant in the church at that particular time and was infiltrating some of the smaller churches in the areas in Asia Minor. So basically, like when you read the first couple of verses, he says, this is what we have seen, what we have heard, what we have touched, speaking of Christ. He's trying to explain that this Christ was a physical being. He wasn't a spiritual being. And they witnessed all these things of him, the things that he said, he spoke about, all these different types of things. And when it's talking about if we have sinned, we have an advocate with the Father, who is Jesus Christ. And it says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So what those verses are talking about is agnosticism believes that this spirit is separate from the physical. So there's different camps of Gnosticism in that time. One camp was saying that the enlightened, people who were Gnostics were enlightened, spiritually enlightened. They were separated from the body, basically. The body was nothing. The body was just corrupt. It was evil. And so there was no need of that, in a sense. However, they were still in the body until they die, and then they'd be spiritually separated forever. Jesus was never raised as a spiritual or a physical being. He was only raised as a spiritual being. All these different teachings that come from that, which I've covered before in another video. So when it says, John is saying, if you do sin, they're claiming that they don't sin. There's no such thing as sin anymore because they're separate from the body in a sense, right? So the spiritual doesn't matter. You can sin all you want, you can be carnal, whatever the case might be. The other camp suggests that they were going through all these different types of legalistic rituals and whatnot, and abstaining from foods and different things like that, to try to be perfect in a sense. So John was addressing these things, and he was saying, well, there's a possibility of a Christian to sin. Even though they shouldn't be sinning, there's a possibility of sin. And if there is sin, we need to confess it to the Father so he can forgive us and cleanse us from those sins. That the passage where, or the verse where it talks about him cleansing from our sins, right, and confessing, all of that verse is a present tense ongoing. There's no middle voice there in the Greek to suggest that it was something in the past that happened where we're forgiven. Just have a look at A.T. Robertson's commentary on those passages, and also Bill Mounts. These are two one of the most respected Greek scholars we have seen in the last couple of centuries, and they're both saying that this passage is present tense, ongoing. So, as a person who's hearing these teachings of hyper grace, where we're forgiven past, present, future, there's a problem here with this verse because John, one of the apostles, is saying, no, we have to confess our sins to Christ. There's a need to confess it because sin separates us from God, right? Another part of the chapter talks about God is light and in him there is no darkness. Well, that's a separation from sin and light, and that also touches upon the Gnostics' belief where they can be enlightened and in tune with God, yet be walking in darkness, walking in sinfulness, because they feel that sin in the body and the flesh is nothing to them, right? So these are issues that need to be addressed.